Hey everyone, welcome to another recording session for the Polite Society podcast. My name is Paul Lathrop. I'm the Deputy Director of New Media for the Second Amendment Foundation. Fair warning, this is the first day in several days I've been on the air. I've been fighting a respiratory infection of some kind or another, and I am going to do my best. Helping me out tonight, I have got John, Amanda, and Rob. I think you're going to be dealing with them a whole lot more than you're going to be dealing with me. I'll push the buttons. I'll offer my opinion where I can, and I'm not hacking up a lung, but I think we're gonna rely on my team more than we're gonna rely on me. I want to mention as we get going, if you're watching us live on the Polite Society podcast feeds, either Facebook or YouTube, go ahead and comment on those feeds, and I'll get those comments put on the air. We'll discuss them live. If you are catching us anywhere else, go to Twitter. Tweet with the hashtag PS Podcast. I'm about out of air, so unless my team has any objections, I'm going to shut my mouth. I'm going to start pushing buttons, and Masada Ayub is going to start talking to us. All right. In that case, here we go. Masada Ayub in 5, 4, 3.
Hey gang, this is Masada Ayub from the Pro Arms Podcast. I'm here to remind you that our podcast is a member of the Self-Defense Radio Network, and I'm going to suggest you do what we do and check out the other podcasts at selfdefenseradio.net.
Treat every firearm as if it's loaded.
Never point a firearm at anything you're not willing to kill or destroy.
Keep your finger off the trigger until you are on target and ready to fire.
Always be sure of your target and what lies beyond it.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the Second Amendment Foundation's Polite Society podcast. This is going to be episode 645. We're recording this on Monday, January the 2nd, 2023. I'm Paul Lathrop.
I'm Rob Morse. And on tonight's show, we'll talk about the Second Amendment Foundation filing a lawsuit in New Jersey. Or should we say, filing another lawsuit?
I'm John Richardson, and we will talk about a shooting in the Mall of America.
I'm Amanda Suffolk, and we're going to talk about finding a naked man in your kitchen and your house ransacked. So climb aboard.
Strap in.
And hang on.
Episode 645 of the Polite Society podcast starts right now. It is Monday night. It is 6 p.m. in the Central Time Zone, the only time zone that matters. That means it's time for another episode of the Polite Society podcast. Rob, we haven't been on the air in 3 weeks, so what's been up with you lately, man?
I was near Rochester, New York for Christmas. If you have to be without power and have pipes freeze, it's great to do that with family. Now that I'm back in Louisiana, where the temperature today was about 75, I was on Charles Heller's radio show, America Armed and Free. That was on Sunday. Today I was on Bill Frady's Lock and Load radio show. I recorded another episode of Self-Defense Gun Stories, and I carried concealed every day. Life's just the right amount of exciting. John, how about you?
Well, I hope all of our listeners had a great Christmas and got everything they asked for from Santa. For myself, I had a lot more fun watching the granddaughters opening their presents, which is probably the greatest gift of all. After Christmas, however, we were without water from Monday to sometime late Friday. There are still parts of the Asheville area that are without water. They're blaming it on altitude and pressure and not incompetence. And while we had bottled water to drink, you still couldn't take a shower in it. In gun news, I leave for the SHOT Show in less than 2 weeks. Again, it has snuck up on me. And I'm really praying that Southwest has their act together. Amanda?
Well, I've been traveling, trying to get out of Ohio and the sub-zero temperatures there. But I've been driving and flying. And so the big thing is trying to strategically deposit firearms gear for the next steps in my travels, if you will. I'm taking a class and then teaching one in Florida early February, Ambassadors Academy with Diana Muller. And then with having driven to Florida before I fly to Dallas, Columbus, Cleveland, Vegas, and then back to Florida, I figured that I could travel with my gun and drop my range gear at one stop. So trying to figure that all out somewhat made my head hurt, but we've got it. How about you, Paul?
I suppose
Paul?
I should turn my microphone back on so I can talk.
Mm-hmm.
Christmas, I caught whatever I have now. So that was my big Christmas gift from Santa, was a respiratory infection. Most of my life the past week has been dealing with this, trying to get some work done, trying to breathe, and failing at both. So not a whole lot going on with me. Not doing SHOT Show this year. Right now, I'm going to just concentrate on trying to get all my productions up and get them done on time. And we'll see how that goes this week. We've been getting a lot of comments coming in, and these may look a little different because if somebody's watching in a Facebook group rather than on a Polite Society podcast, it just comes through and it looks a little different as we get the as we get the comments coming in. But Mary Louise on Facebook is checking in, and question coming from 500 Magnum: do you think we'll get constitutional carry in all 3 states, Florida, South Carolina, Nebraska this year? Myself, I'm gonna give Nebraska about an 80% chance of getting it done. I'm gonna give Florida a 50-50 shot of getting it done. South Carolina, maybe 25% chance. I don't think they're gonna get it done. John, you're closer to South Carolina than me. What do you think, man?
They had a heck of a time getting open carry approved, as I remember it. And that was just last year. I know we in Grassroots North Carolina are going to be pushing for constitutional carry, along with getting rid of the pistol purchase permit. In our case, we now again have a supermajority in the state Senate, and we're one off from having it in the state House. You just get to have one Democrat who wants to keep his seat, and I think we could, knock on wood, possibly get constitutional carry. I mean, we have it for open carry. We've had it for open carry since 1922. It's just, can we get permitless concealed carry?
So now we get to. I've been giving Nebraska a hard time, and I've been giving Florida a hard time about boldly going where 25 other states have gone before.
Right.
By the way, as of yesterday, it is now 25 because Alabama took effect yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It was 24 with Alabama hanging out there, and we're going to be there. We're going to be there. Alabama's now here. So
isn't Georgia there as well today?
Georgia, my understanding was Georgia's law became effective the second the governor signed it.
Okay.
Yeah. I only think Alabama was the one that held for like 10 months or some extremely long period of time.
Yeah.
What about Louisiana, Rob?
Yeah, that was vetoed by our Democrat governor. We, in theory, had a veto-proof majority. The governor bought a Republican. That Republican has essentially been ostracized in the Senate. He's not going to be able to run again. And all of our governors are one term and done. So we have to wait really for our next election for governor.
You know, that is a very good point that you made, Rob, about somebody who turns against their party and what happens to them in the long run. I honestly don't believe they think that they live in this little microcosm that's them and their friends at the state capitol, and that the rest of us don't have any say in it. We're having the same type of conversation here in Ohio on a different situation, and people are like, well, this is what I've heard. And it's like, well, that's not why you were elected. That's not who elected you. So there will be repercussions to this. And there's so many political pundits that just don't get it. Right.
Yeah. The Senate, there was a weekly attended election early in December, and they put in a constitutional amendment that the Senate gets to ratify the appointment to these executive committees that are going to go study something, which were the plums that the governor was giving out and used it to bribe senators. And the Senate said, yeah, you know what? We're going to review those plums so that you can't do that again.
Oh, yeah.
Karma.
Yeah. And let's remember that Louisiana is the home of the legendary Huey P. Long.
Right.
And Louisiana corruption is thy name. So yeah.
It's Louisiana corruption is somewhat of a redundant statement.
Yeah. They got one more question I want to put up, and then we'll because the reason I'm letting this go on so long is simply we don't have a guest tonight, and it's New Year's, and I just, I figure it's going to be a short show anyway.
You're feeling generous, is that what you're saying?
I'm feeling generous, and I'm enjoying not talking. So let me get this comment up here. Red flag laws being found unconstitutional. How long until it becomes unconstitutional for all states that have it? That's a great question. I think I'm going to go to Rob to start with on this one. What do you think, man?
Well, yeah, I'm going to wrap that up with a bunch of very, very similar questions. And that particular question came up when an ex-boyfriend says, yeah, that girlfriend, man, I think she's a danger. And New York's cops grab her firearms, and she says, wait a minute. After Bruen, this is as much a human right, a legal right as we have, and you took my guns without any representation in court. You can't do that. And a judge on the New York Supreme Court said, yeah, you're right. Yeah, no, that can't be constitutional. But when we look at all the things that have happened in New York, you really need a program and, have your field glasses focused because things are changing so fast. On the pro-right side, we've seen judges from different legislative districts rule. As Magnum said, red flag laws in New York State are unconstitutional. Churches are not prohibited places. Your personal car can't be a prohibited place. Residents and businesses do not have to post big guns welcome sign so that their customers who are carrying aren't felons. Interestingly enough, that would be an infringement on both the First and Second Amendments. Also, the police do not have the right to search your social media accounts when you apply for your carry permit. If you said something that was criminal in your social media account, by all means, charge me, convict me. Now I have a criminal record. Now we have something we can discuss as I go to apply for a carry permit. And also, The police cannot have the right to go, yeah, now that we look at your application, there are more things we want to know. That's precluded by the Bruin ruling. Unfortunately, we've seen appellate courts then go, yeah, we don't like that. So a district judge puts a 100-page argument as to why New York's laws are unconstitutional, and on the Second Circuit Court of Appeals, the federal court, they go, yeah, no, we'll wait till those cases are completely ruled, completely settled before we'll restrict the state's ability to enforce those laws. What's fascinating, what's really remarkable, is that different states appeal to the Supreme Court to say, would you look at this, please, Judge? We think the state is breaking the law by having unconstitutional laws. Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor oversees New York. She may not be the greatest fan of the Second Amendment, but she is a huge fan of obeying the law. She said, you need to answer the questions that the district's courts have posed, and I give you until January 3rd. That's tomorrow.
Ooh.
Now, lawyers can generate words like nobody's business. They are never speechless. So I'm sure they'll get a bunch of state lawyers to throw thousands of pages of silliness. Well, then that will have to be argued in court. John, what do you think?
Well, I had heard a speculation, and truly this is just speculation, that one of the reasons that Sotomayor basically said, come up, explain yourself, was she wanted to prevent the rest of the Supreme Court from getting involved, knowing full well that if the rest of the court got involved, the pro-right side would absolutely win. And, I think you're right in something you posted a little earlier, that maybe, just maybe, more than once per decade or once in a generation, the Supreme Court will get involved in Second Amendment cases. I think they're going to have to post-Bruin.
Well, isn't that interesting that no matter what the court says, it literally does not matter what they say. If they only issue a ruling once a decade, then it's the inferior courts who are going to decide what the Second Amendment actually means.
And, I think that's what really teed off Justice Thomas, that they were they were just being ignored, along with, I think, a couple of other justices that said, whoa, wait a minute. You guys are just dumping on what precedent that we gave you, and you're just ignoring it. And that doesn't fly.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I think the one interesting thing is that in this last anti-gun bill that passed through Congress and the president signed in 2022, there was a bunch of money in there to bribe states to invoke red flag laws. So if I were one of the state's attorney generals, I would invoke red flag laws, and I would take as much money as I could possibly get from the federal government before Bruin is found to be in effect. And that way I've got the money, and you come and try to get it back.
In North Carolina, the leading proponent of red flag laws, well, the state attorney general couldn't take it without, I think, the General Assembly getting involved. But the person in the General Assembly who's pushing red flag laws the hardest is a former Superior Court judge who's now a state legislator, a state representative, which is really kind of sad that she has such disrespect for constitutional law and due process.
I want to throw Paul, do we have time for me to throw ask a larger question on this subject? Do we want to get a comment first?
Let me bring up one thing here real quick, and that I think my microphone might be a little low. Let me check something real quick.
It is a little low.
There we go. A little better?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I want to bring up that this week, well, actually late last week, the
Maybe a little too much better.
Sorry. Late last week, the Second Amendment Foundation and the Firearms Policy Coalition sued the state of New York over the SAFE Act. We are not only going against the Concealed Carry Improvement Act, we're also trying to take down the SAFE Act now under Bruen. And there was a comment. Let me find it here. Let me put this up. I really wish California, Connecticut would get constitutional carry there as well, but unfortunately it will be almost impossible. Way too many anti-gunners there. The only way it's going to happen, and I mean this, the only way that's going to happen is if they're sued into it. Right. And even then, I don't know if the Supreme Court is going to go all the way to permitless carry.
Right. They'd have to rule that shall issue is an infringement.
And it is, but they have to rule that way.
Right. Yeah. We're seeing just brilliant arguments come out, like someone saying 18, 19, 20-year-olds, why can't they get a gun? By the way, they're old enough to be convicted of crimes as adults. They do everything that adults do. They get contracts. They can go in debt. They get married. They have families. They need to defend those families. Why do we treat them as we ask them to vote. Why do we treat them as children when it comes to defending themselves? Because if you're saying, well, they sometimes behave badly, have I got a list of congressmen and senators who need to be denied a lot of rights just based on behavior?
Yeah, taking what Rob just said about 18, 19, 20-year-olds in a totally different direction, but still using it. Have you noticed in recent news reports over the last month, they're talking about the number of children who have been killed in firearms-related incidents of whatever sort? An 18-year-old is not a child.
Right.
And they go usually up to age 19, so you're having 17, 18, up to 19-year-olds. They're not breaking it down. Are 5 and under being injured, or is it, for lack of a better word, kids who are joining street gangs, who are joining drug-related gangs,
right,
that are getting in drive-by shootings and whatever, and they won't specify to that level.
No,
Which is possible.
I'm in Florida right now, and there was just a gang-related shooting, and the father of one of the victims, well, that was also one of the perpetrators. That
gang on gang.
If you're shooting at each other, who's really the victim besides society? But the father was like, this gun violence has just got to stop, and it's like, take the word gun out of it. And then daddy step in and say this violence that was perpetrated by my child, that is something we need to do something about.
Right.
By the way, can we send you to a reparenting class since it's your child?
Right. Yeah. Here's another interesting one that was in the news down here. 2 business partners somehow had a business falling out, and they shot at one another.
Yeah.
And they killed one another. They both shot, they both died. They don't they don't tell us what the business is.
Yeah.
Inquiring minds want to know. That's all I've got.
Pharmaceuticals.
Could be.
Yes.
Chemistry.
Street level pharmaceuticals, right.
Mm-hmm.
What was that? What was that text, Paul?
We didn't read it.
Leftists have
Yep.
no problem putting a 16-year-old behind the wheel of a car and letting them drive 70 miles an hour in traffic. C&T Design and Arms. Wow. You guys are
They
spot
also
on.
want them to vote.
Yes. I just, I'm doing a DGU with Tony Simon. I think it's tomorrow. And there is a 23-year-old who gets home. It's an attempted carjacking by a 15-year-old, a 17-year-old, and an 18-year-old. She shoots one of them. The other two are being charged with felony murder. And as somebody at Bearing Arms said, at least the deceased criminal died doing what he loved.
Oh no.
Yes.
And I think the text that came up said undocumented pharmacist.
Yes.
Yes.
So
Right.
exactly, yeah. We had something in our local neighborhood where somebody was manufacturing meth, and so they called them the chemist, and then the distributor was the pharmacist, right?
Right.
It was like, yeah, there's a stretch.
Yeah.
Well, but there is and there isn't. The thing that drives me crazy is lots of our failed blue cities have made honest businesses so cumbersome that kids go, all right, if I can't get a real job, I'll go sell drugs, which means we failed on a lot of levels.
Mm-hmm.
I want to bring up one news story this from just before Christmas. There was a shooting at Mall of America, and Mall of America up in between Minneapolis and St. Paul. It's in the metroplex there.
Mm-hmm.
Made huge news, and one person died, and they were all the rumblings were all about we need better gun control in Minnesota until the next morning when it came out that it was two groups of disadvantaged young people that were just turning their lives around and happened to be members of opposing gangs.
Right.
And then the story never got mentioned again. I couldn't seriously. I couldn't find one issue where it came up. For this happened Christmas Eve. I couldn't find one time when it came up from the Monday after Christmas to now.
Right.
And I seriously, they're gonna as long as a old white guy uses a handgun, they're gonna, no matter what happens, we need more gun control. Somebody who doesn't fit the old white guy narrative, you'll never hear about it again, period.
Oh, can I amplify that point?
Yeah.
John Lott pointed out that if honest citizens are allowed to carry arms, we stop more than half of mass murders. Mass murderers have this figured out. 98% of them, that's 49 out of 50 for those of you Packers fans, they go and attack in gun-free zones because they want a shooting. They do not want a gunfight where bullets are going both ways.
Right.
So since all our politicians can do is make laws, there's a shooting and a politician goes, I'm going to put out a press release to say that you need more of what I'm selling. I'm selling gun-free zones. They don't work, but it's the only product that politicians have.
Yep.
I want to get this comment up from Brent. Brent lives in that area. How many of you know that the victim also had a gun?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And another C&T says, I'm sure all of them were headed to medical school and law school the next day.
Right. They had
Only if they were going to rob the students there.
They had
Maybe
an
it's a
article.
cadaver.
Oh, John.
Points for Richardson.
Yes.
Man.
Let me get, and we're getting all kinds of great comments in here. Brent again says they're going to fix it by doing bag checks now. A friend was denied entry for carrying a pocket knife. You know, they need to make sure you are carrying. That's what needs to happen. Everybody going in there that's 18 or older, if you're not carrying, you're not allowed in. We need more security.
Here's a guy.
Or, hi, here's my carry permit. I've had FBI fingerprints. You know I'm not a gang member. And how is it going to make me safer to disarm? How is it going to make you safer to disarm me? On the other hand, I did have to go into a courthouse, court building where, officer, I got to do a security check. I just realized I got a pocket knife here. I'm actually doing a passport application in one part of the building. He goes, can you put it in your backpack and leave it there? And I go, oh, heck yeah. He goes, okay, have a great day. You know, the guy had some common sense. Thank goodness they still make those.
Yeah, no.
Mm-hmm.
No. Yeah, no, right.
Let me get
I was going to
this
say
one
my
up here.
community, then no, we don't have one of those.
CNT says mass shooters don't want two-way ranges.
Right.
Exactly.
And how about criminals just leave their guns and weapons at home? That'll fix everything.
Right.
All right. Let's see here. What else we got in the news for today? I'd put some other things in there. Yeah, let's Petaluma, California. Let's talk a little bit about that. This is a story by Dave Workman over at Liberty Park Press, and of course Dave is a SAF employee. City of Petaluma has adopted a requirement that all firearms within city limits must be disabled with a locking device or placed in a locked container inside the home. Somebody needs to go get the Heller decision and explain it to the city council of Petaluma. I'm sure if somebody were to buy Dick Heller a plane ticket, he'd go down there, he'd tell him himself.
Yeah, it wouldn't be a short conversation, though. You've seen Dick in action.
But that's
You know,
what Heller was about. Heller was you had to disassemble your firearm when it was at home.
Right.
Unfortunately, there was a case after that out of San Francisco in the Ninth Circuit. In the same issue, San Francisco said that if you were not actively carrying your gun in your home, you had to lock it up. And the Ninth Circuit said, sounds good to us. And the Supreme Court would not take the case on certiorari. Now, this was years before Bruin, not too long after McDonald. Was it San Francisco, Jackson versus San Francisco, something like that?
You guys are, man, I've learned, you guys are smart. I'm really lucky to hang out on this show and learn stuff. Thank you.
I'm cursed with a good memory.
Man.
But you're absolutely right. I've actually lived in Petaluma for a little bit.
I'm sorry.
Right. You lived in East San Diego County.
Yeah, I lived in El Cajon for a while.
Yeah, climate's better in Petaluma. Neither of us are there for the Second Amendment rights.
Right.
Why is a town making laws like that? They know nothing. They're posturing politically. They're greasing the skids because they would like higher office, perhaps state rep.
Are they maybe, and I'm looking straight at you, Rob, are they maybe looking at, if I do this, can I get Soros money to run for district attorney or to run for state house or state senate?
I would say Bloomberg money, unless they're a lawyer running for
Can
You've
I
got the
get
right-
bigger money?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. You got it.
Yep. I found the case. I was right. It was Jackson versus City and County of San Francisco, 2015. Supreme Court. The issue is whether San Francisco's attempt to deprive law-abiding individuals of immediate access to operable handguns in their home is any more constitutional than the District of Columbia's invalidated effort to do the same, and the Supreme Court would not take it.
Well, and we have to ask
And
why.
then,
Well, I think the 2015 Supreme Court and 2022 Supreme Court are completely
Are different
courts.
animals. Right.
They're
Right.
completely different animals, and so it's going to be interesting watching to see what's happening next.
and I presume that the city attorney for Petaluma is still relying on what happened in the Ninth Circuit back in 2015,
Of course
Not-
he is.
not what's going on post Bruin. Yeah.
Well, and he doesn't even need to explain it to the voters because I'm sure there's a Bloomberg law firm who will say, by the way, we'll cover your legal costs.
I mean, I'm talking to some of my state legislators who are talking about different laws in Ohio, and I said about Bruin and what that is, and they're like, we don't know anything about that. What? Exactly. And it's like, well, here, I'm going to give you a couple pointers to send your clerks to go research before you carry on.
Because if not, we're going to be all over you like, ink on.
You bet.
Paul, we've got some great news. Can I jump to the bottom of our stack here if we're done with Petaluma?
I got to turn my microphone back on, and
Because you were
500
coughing.
and 500 Magnum already beat you to it, dude.
Okay, let's have it. Yes!
Yep.
500 Magnum, right on target. You're right. No, not only Hawaii. Hawaii's done it before. I believe it was on the Big Island in the Honolulu district, right?
Yep, Honolulu County.
Yeah, they finally issued some permits, and I think they issued 8 this year. They have a backlog of 600 applications. Interestingly
and they issued
enough,
1.
8. Yeah, they.
No, they had a signing ceremony for 1 on Thursday.
Yeah, and the guy said he'll probably get another 8 before the end of the year. Interestingly enough, the sheriff hasn't rejected a single application.
Okay.
Also,
and at that rate, if I were to
Right.
move to Honolulu and apply, I would get a permit somewhere around my 173rd birthday.
maybe. What's interesting on Facebook is I'm seeing guys say, I live in Manhattan, New York, and I have a permit. So we can argue that city councils and county councils in Hawaii trying to make cumbersome laws of prohibited areas, but Bruin worked. People who couldn't before are now getting a permit. That's
Right.
progress.
It's slow, and in some cases they've cracked the dam and you're waiting to see there's a seep.
Yep.
We want to see the water flow. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
And they have the world's best cover garments in Hawaii anyway.
Oh,
Right.
yeah.
Exactly. Everybody's gone to those.
I wear them up here. I don't wear them this time of year, but I've got several. So, let's see here. Is there anything else in news we want to...
Yeah. When we take a commercial break, I'm bowing out. I need to. This is for those of you who notice the backdrop is different. I'm in my secondary house and setting everything up, and things aren't working quite as well as one would hope. But it's a learning curve. So thanks for letting me practice on you.
All right, let's do that. When we come back, we'll have our DGU segment. We'll talk about that. And it's going to be a short show tonight because, as you can tell, I haven't been talking a lot. But let's go to our DGU segment. We'll be right back right after we hear from ACLDN. Hang on, everybody, back after this.
This portion of the Polite Society podcast is brought to you by the Armed Citizens Legal Defense Network. If you carry a defensive handgun, you need protection from the aftermath of prosecution. Even if you do everything right, you can be the victim of an overzealous prosecutor or even be falsely accused. That is where the ACLDN comes in. They provide immediate assistance when you need it most. If you find yourself under arrest, they immediately pay bail money and the retainer for your attorney. Additional funds are available for trial and civil proceedings. Beyond the money, they have far and away the best team in the industry, providing you invaluable information and training DVDs that are included with your membership and who stand ready to work with your lawyer on your defense. People like Massad Ayub, John Farnham, James Fleming, Tom Gibbons, Emmanuel Capelson, Dennis Tuller, and led by Network President Marty Hayes. Initial membership is only $135 for your first year, and you get 8 incredible training DVDs and other educational material when you join. If you don't have tens of thousands of dollars to defend yourself at your disposal right now, you need to be a member of the ACLDN. Go to armedcitizensnetwork.org and become a member today. And please mention that you heard about them on the Polite Society podcast.
Hey everyone,
John,
welcome.
what do you think about saving Paul's voice and you doing the intro for the DGUs? Would you do that?
I'll do that. I'll be nice to Paul today.
Does that work?
That works. These discussions are not legal advice. Some of us are trainers, but this is not formal training, and you need formal training. The defensive gun use segment is intended as information, not as training. As always, the opinions of the host are only their own opinions and not those of any sponsors or other affiliations. Rob, tell me what's going on the other side of the Smokies.
Yeah, Knoxville, Tennessee. The resident of a home was walking back. He'd been in his shop. He's going to his main building. And as he enters through the back door, he notices that the front door was opened. Not when I left. He also found that someone had ransacked his living room. He looks around and finds a 27-year-old man sitting in the kitchen. A naked 27-year-old man sitting in the kitchen. The intruder motions for the homeowner the homeowner motions for the intruder, get out of here. Before the bad guy starts to vandalize and throw things around the home. At that point, the stranger became pretty aggressive. The homeowner and his wife then fled to a neighbor's home. They're over there calling 911 from the neighbor's home, and the neighbor grabs his 9mm and goes into the front yard. He finds the naked man standing in the resident's driveway now. The intruder got on top of the homeowner's car and broke off the rear windshield wiper. Now he takes a windshield wiper and runs toward the neighbor, wiper in hand, and the neighbor was saying, "Stop, don't come on my property, stop. The neighbor retreats into his yard. The crazy man continues to come at him with a wiper blade. Commands aren't working. The neighbor did what we tell everyone to do, which is have the gun in his hand. Then he did what we tell you not to do, and he shoots a warning shot. The good news is it was into the ground on his own property. The crazy guy doesn't stop. The neighbor shoots him one time. That message was received. The attacker was taken to a medical center for treatment of a gunshot wound to the chest. He's in critical condition. No results of the toxicology tests haven't come in yet. You know how I'm going to bet that this guy was higher than a kite. John, what do you think?
You beat me to it. I think we can guess what they were. That said, you think, he just had a windshield wiper. Yeah, it's metal. It can slash you. I've heard of people protecting themselves with car antennas. A windshield wiper is no different. He could have gotten some bad... I don't think you could have gone deep, but it could have caused a lot of cuts that would have needed stitches. He had a weapon as far as I'm concerned. Now, the other thing I would like to say is it's a shame that they had to rely upon the neighbor for their own protection, as opposed to being able to handle it themselves. But what do you?
Did anybody look it up? Is Tennessee constitutional carry yet?
Yes, it is.
So if you could legally own a gun, you could have carried it at least as you fled to your neighbor's home.
Yes.
I don't think it is. I think it's a castle doctrine state, and there is not a no. What am I? It is a no duty to retreat. It is a stand your ground state. I don't think you needed to retreat. By the way, in New York, you probably legally did need to retreat to your neighbor's home. You need to retreat as far as possible. You can't use lethal force as long as you can, in quotes, safely retreat even more.
I mean, it also points out that you need good locks, and you should make sure your doors are locked when you leave the house. And I go to the mailbox, I come in, and the first thing I do is I throw the deadbolt. It's just habit. I always lock the door now.
Thank you.
Well, the next one comes from Kershaw County, South.
Let me jump in. I forgot to turn my mic back on. When I leave my house, and Susan does the same thing, we have a mantra: wallet, phone, gun, keys, lock. Do I have my wallet on me? Do I have my phone on me? Is my gun and spare mag there? Do I have my keys? Is the door locked? We repeat that every time, and I'll sometimes get to wallet, phone. We got a runner. I will stop and go back and make sure everything is in place before I leave the house. That has become habit over several years of both Susan and I doing it time and time and time again. Let's make sure your house is secured when you leave it. And by the way,
you have a checklist.
Yes.
Pilots do that. People who are in a security situation and need to make sure they're doing the right thing. Oh, did I forget? Good on you.
I also have 2 big dogs that would not be very happy if they were to come through the locked door, but that's kind of on them for going through a locked door.
Right.
John, let's talk about Hacksaw.
Yeah, from Kershaw County, South Carolina, which I found out just last week. I had an aunt and first cousins that used to live there. Hacksaw Jim Duggan. For anyone who followed professional wrestling in the late 80s, early 90s, you know the name. Having watched him battle names like Hulk Hogan, Andre the Giant, and on in the square ring. More recently, he had a worse enemy, cancer, and so far he has also won there. Duggan and his wife, both 68, have retired a 10-acre property in rural Kershaw County, South Carolina. Their home is, and they have a fenced yard. At 6:45 p.m. on December 8th, an intruder entered his house. As he entered the home, Duggan and his wife could hear yelling in the neighborhood. Duggan put the man on the ground, held the intruder's hands behind his back, and with the other hand kept a .44 he kept near the door. Held a .44 that he kept on the guy near the door. As he held the man down, the intruder said he characterized the intruder as hysterical, who said, "I was being chased." He had tried a number of neighbors' doors before hopping Duggan's fence and going towards Duggan's house. Since Duggan could hear people, he had his wife kill the Christmas lights. She also called the sheriff's office.
Again, no report on toxicology. What do you want to make a bet, John?
Local moonshine or meth or...
Yeah. Could be any of those. I like what Duggan did. Duggan, when I mean, obviously he stopped it and put the guy on the ground, held him there with the revolver, and then when the guy started saying, "Look, I'm being chased," he had the wife kill the Christmas lights, kill all the lights. She's already been on the phone with the sheriff. If this guy's right, let's cover it. If this guy's just speaking out his backside, it doesn't hurt us. As long as I keep him covered, for us to humor him and make sure that we are as well are safe. I watched a interview with him. It was just before Christmas on Fox News. And the guy, he's in his 70s, but he's still, I don't know, as somebody who did watch wrestling in the late 80s, early 90s, I wouldn't want to come up against him with a 2x4 in his hand. I'm telling you what, man, he's still got some wherewithal with him and got some power to him. So,
the thing I notice, if they were my neighbor, I'm thinking, wow, walk through your safety plan. Not because you're a celebrity, but because help is a long way away. You know, okay,
20,
which one
minutes.
of you is going to call? Yeah, which one of you is going to call? Which one of you is going to have a gun? You know, a man who has some physical strength, awesome. You keep his eyes behind his back. Let your wife have the firearm because you don't want to, you know, you're going to run out of hands pretty quickly, and you're probably safer with someone who's not next to the crazy person to hold the firearm. And now you got to figure out, okay, who's got the spare third hand to make the phone call?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I was a little concerned with him holding the guy's hands behind his back with one hand and a gun in the other hand.
Yeah, I suppose it could be done depending on, you know, that's two hands in one hand, plus if you got a firearm in one hand, that's all that's occupying that hand. So, all I got to say is to Jim Duggan, ho! Anyway, let's... I think that's going to do it for DGUs. Let's take our final break. When we come back, we'll talk about what we've been up to in media, and we'll shut the show down, and we'll be out of here by the top of the hour. Big shock. Let's do that. We're going to hear from JPFO right back, right after this.
It all failed before. Alcohol prohibition brought us organized crime, and no less alcohol. Drug prohibition brought us murderous, no-knock, wrong house raids.
Police! Search warrant!
No, wait! The crack house is next door!
Now gun prohibitionists want laws to lead us down that same path. Don't Americans ever learn? Just ask yourself, isn't government the only beneficiary of police-state policies? Brought to you by Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership. Information available at jpfo.org.
All right, we are back. This is the final segment of the Polite Society podcast presented by the Second Amendment Foundation. I just want to get this comment in here real quick. CNT says, after listening to self-defense gun stories, I follow Pants On, Gun On.
Thank you, CNT.
And Gerald on the face, going back to the Jim Duggan story, I would imagine he had pressure on that arm, just short of breaking. Yeah, I could see that, I guess. You have to be a little bit careful there. In what's just short of breaking on me would be just past breaking, possibly, on another person. So, I couldn't tell you. But I do know wrestling, he's going to know. From all those years of wrestling, he is going to know the restraint holds. Let's go ahead and talk, Rob. It's been several weeks since we've had a Polite Society podcast. We were off for Christmas Eve, off for New Year's Eve, for the weekend shows, and haven't had a Polite Society in a couple weeks either. What's been going on over at your blog, man?
I just want to talk about the two latest posts. I was reading a bunch of news articles when I was in New York, and I went, wow, do you see how these fit together? A committee of U.S. mayors at the U.S. Conference of Mayors put out a press release saying, wow, we really need more gun control to be safer. In the second story, I noticed that gun control activists, with the help of those Democrat senators and the Biden administration, were pressuring the U.S. CDC to remove a study that showed honest citizens defend themselves with a firearm over 2.5 million times a year. Can't let the public find that data. In the third and final story we're putting together, remember anti-gun billionaire Michael Bloomberg donated $100 million to the Biden campaign in Florida and $20 million to Senate Democrats. The connection is obvious. Democrat mayors need an excuse to justify the violence in their failed cities. Bloomberg will fund them if they blame guns. That article is titled, Democrat Politicians Hide Their Problems in Plain Sight. I wrote an article this morning. The corporate news media is in the business of delivering eyes and ears to its advertisers. That means they ignore the common but important stories in order to leave room for the shock and outrage that keeps us watching and listening through the commercials. Ordinary citizens like us defend ourselves, our family, and innocent strangers every day. You wouldn't know that from watching the news. Let's look at why the corporate media does such a bad job of reporting on us. That's called What the News Can't Tell Us About Armed Defense. My articles are up at Clash Daily, at Amoland, and at my blog, slowfacts.wordpress.com. John, you've been busy at your blog, No Lawyers, Only Guns and Money.
Well, I have had, as you said, multiple posts. There's a couple I want to highlight. First deals with the Royal Canadian Mounted Police request for a new service pistol. They're actually using an older version of the Smith & Wesson Model 59. With Trudeau seeking to ban all handguns and probably soon all guns, one has to ask, why do they even need a new pistol? That said, going over the list of criteria for the new gun leaves me shaking my head. Now you would think reliability, accuracy, ease of use, rails, ability to take a red dot would be number one, and you would be wrong. No, it is, quote, alignment with diversity and inclusion by, quote, leveraging gender-based analysis in the selection of service pistols, unquote. Oh, and it also has to be able to take a lanyard for ceremonial purposes. To our Canadian listeners, all I have to say is you have our sympathies. The second post is one I just did this morning, and it regards Avidity Arms PD-10. It has been released. It will be at SHOT. It has a distributor in Davidson's, and it's going to ship in February. I had spoken about it earlier that I got to shoot the prototypes. Well, in the meantime, I got to shoot the pre-release production models during the durability testing. It's being manufactured 2 miles from my house, which is, I think, kind of cool. And I think it's going to make a nice carry pistol. I think Rob did a good job with it. So that and more is at onlygunsandmoney.com.
So, John, what you're saying is that the RCMP is guaranteed to get non-functioning pistols.
Well, I may not go that far, but it is.
They're going to make.
I probably should not say anything because I could probably be totally non-politically correct.
If you are going to, if your priority is alignment with diversity and inclusion by leveraging gender-based analysis, and not when you pull the trigger, does this go bang? Does the
Yep.
bang that happens put the bullet where the shooter intended the bullet to go? How easy is it? Those are things that should be at the very, very top of the list, as you said. But when how woke is it? You're gonna maybe get one bang, and then you've got a really expensive paperweight in your hands. I'm going to be curious to find out what they select and make sure I never, ever, ever own one, because
Right.
if it's good enough for RCMP, that means, man, it
Wasn't good enough for me.
yeah.
Well,
not
if you're
even close.
Canadian, you're not going to be able to buy it anyway because they've banned sale of all new pistols.
Yeah.
But by the way, why do the RCMP need firearms since firearms are outlawed in Canada?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, my response, what I said in the blog post is, the Canadian Rangers, who were mostly Inuit and other Native or First Nations, I think they call them in Canada, had been armed with old Enfield rifles, and then now they've got something new from Tikka, and basically they used it to protect themselves from polar bears. So only those RCMP that are like at Churchill, Manitoba, stuff around Hudson Bay or further north, give them the old Enfields. Let them protect themselves against polar bears. I'm cool with that. Rampaging moose, maybe. They don't need pistols. And if you're in Toronto or Ottawa or Montreal, harsh words.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's do this. On my end, I'm still recovering. Is there going to be a daily bullet tomorrow? Probably. No, actually, you know what? I forgot. I have a dental appointment tomorrow. Rob, I'm dropping the bomb on him right now. He doesn't know this. There's not going to be a bullet tomorrow because I have dental appointment, and I will not have teeth at airtime. And so, yeah, you do not want to see me without teeth. Wednesday, come back. Dan Was is Wednesday, 5 p.m. Central Time. And hopefully the rest of this week we'll get regular daily bullets out as I'm able to speak more and more without hacking. But let's see. I think that does wrap up another episode of the Second Amendment Foundation's Polite Society podcast for Amy, Dana, Tracy, John, Susan, Amanda, Charlie, and Rob.
Until next time.
Stay safe. Be aware.
And we'll see you down the road.
The views and opinions on the show you just heard are those of the host and the guest and are not necessarily the views of any sponsors or other affiliations. But hey, not everyone is as smart as we are.
All right, we are done recording. Seriously, folks, I'm sorry. No post show tonight. I'm hurting. I'm going to go ahead and we're going to shut down the broadcast, and